Jesus loves me. This I know, for the Bible tells me so. Little ones to him belong. They are weak, but he is strong. Yes, Jesus loves me. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Horror Movie Syllabus. My name is Professor Victor, and I'll be your host as we go through all the essential, noteworthy, interesting, and notorious modern horror films. If you're new to the channel, I recommend you check out the introduction video. There's a link to that in the description below. It'll give you a pretty good idea of what the Horror Movie Syllabus is all about. But in short, we take a particular subgenre of horror, and then we look at 3 movies from that subgenre. Today, that's not what we're doing, though. Today, we're looking at a recommendation brought to me by you guys. That's right, you guys have been leaving me recommendations in the video comment sections, and I've been writing them down, making my own to-watch list, and now I'm going through that list kind of at random, picking movies to watch, and then letting you guys know what I think about your recommendations. I figured that'd be a fun way to kind of keep the conversations going, taking a movie that I've never seen before, and then letting you guys know what I thought of it. Today's recommendation is Bloody Bloody Bible Camp. And this one was recommended by the Wee Nerds, and they suggested it as a movie that was so bad it's good. So that kind of gave me a little bit of a clue as to what I was in for. And the only other thing I knew about the movie was that it was supposed to be something of a slasher movie. And you know me, I love me a slasher movie, so that's why I picked this one. I felt like watching a good slasher flick, and I figured, yeah, let's check this one out and see what it's about. Besides, the term Bloody Bloody Bible Camp gave me a hint that it had some sort of a religious aspect to it. And you know me, I love religious horror movies, so religious slasher movie seemed like it was going to be something that was going to be up my alley and be satisfying to me. So the odds were good that this would be something that would be enjoyable, that would be keeping this wave going of good movies that we've been watching lately. These recommendations, so far I've been enjoying most of them quite a bit. And so I've been wanting to kind of keep that momentum going, and this one seemed like a good candidate for that. Now, I'm going to go ahead and give you my quick thoughts, review of the movie, the things I thought were good about it, the things that were not quite so good about it, and then we'll wrap up by talking about whether or not it's syllabus worthy. Is it good enough to actually get on the syllabus? So stay tuned for that, but let's go ahead and jump into a little bit of review right now. Like I said, today we're talking about Bloody Bloody Bible Camp. And Bloody Bloody Bible Camp came out in 2012 and is really kind of a under the radar movie. It didn't really make any impression when it came out. In fact, I hadn't even heard of it before. And it really, when you see it, kind of seems like it's maybe like a straight to video, independent, off-brand movie. But it does have Reggie Bannister in it, so more on that in a second. And it really winds up being something of a surprise, at least to me, and something that I didn't realize I needed until I saw it. But we'll get to that in a minute too. Now, if you haven't seen it, the movie is about a Bible camp in the 70s that winds up having a killer kill most of the campers in a horrific murder spree. And then 7 years later, in the 80s, the camp is being reopened for a Bible group to go out there and do kind of Bible camp. And of course, there's concern that the killer might return and more hijinks might abound. And as you know, I don't like to spoil the hijinks of a movie, so we'll just go ahead and say that the hijinks did abound, and we'll leave it at that. But Bloody Bloody Bible Camp delivered what I was hoping it would deliver, which is a fun slasher movie. The movie is both a slasher and also kind of a parody of slashers, and that's probably the thing I like the most about it. It's both hitting all of the right slasher tropes. It's got, you know, the stock characters who are kind of annoying and you want to see them get killed. It's got these surprising kills. It's got your nudity. It's got your violence. It's got your POV shots. It's got everything you expect from a slasher movie. But at the same time, it's also kind of spoofing slasher movies. It's really kind of like playing up on those tropes and kind of making fun of them at the same time. Now, let me be clear, we're not talking like Scream level of quality here in terms of being like meta commentary and kind of spoofing while at the same time scaring. But I did think that it was doing that very well. Now, I'll be clear, that's not really a very scary movie. It's kind of a horror comedy, and it's probably leaning a little bit more on the comedy, but it's got enough true slasher gore in it to make up for that. And it kind of makes the balance feel a little bit more accurate than it actually probably has any business feeling. the movie clearly has some Friday the 13th envy, or rather, it's really more of an homage to Friday the 13th. It's really paying tribute to it in a number of ways. The setting alone feels kind of like Friday the 13th. The premise of it, a killer coming back who was previously at the camp before. Even some of the kills, there's somebody in a wheelchair, kind of reminiscent of something. Somebody gets nailed to the door frame. Very, very Friday the 13th-esque. And you know me, I love me some Friday the 13th, so this movie was endearing me to it right off the bat. Like I said, it's got a lot of the slasher tropes in it, including the stock characters. None of the characters here are particularly deep, particularly likable, but they are your stock tropes. They have that kind of slasher motif of disposable characters that you're almost kind of wishing would die. Now these people are playing it up a little bit more. They're being a little bit more campy and a little bit bigger than they would be in a regular horror movie, and it threatens to actually slide too much into camp, but they were good enough. They were good enough for me to not be taken too far out of the movie. An added bonus to this is that Reggie Bannister is in that, and Phantasm fans will, of course, recognize Reggie Bannister's name. He's just kind of a great welcome presence in any horror movie, and he's really welcome here. He is also, I think, a producer in the movie, so that maybe explains how they got him to be in the movie, because otherwise it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for him to be in this. Seems a little bit beneath him, but the movie is ambitious in what it's trying to do. It's trying to both be a slasher and be a funny commentary on slashers. And while it's not really successful, it's fun enough that I didn't care that it wasn't successful. A big part of this was really imaginative, funny, fun kills. The kills are very funny. And while the gore isn't top notch, they don't have a Tom Savini here. It's a lot of the gore is kind of like a little quick cut and then some stuff thrown on the screen. But the implication of the way the things are being killed is hysterical. Some of the dismemberment that happens and some of the kills, the guy having sex with the girl who's been beheaded is absolutely hysterical. I was laughing out loud in a very positive, fun way. I was having a good time with this movie. They wanted me to be laughing at it, and I was, and that was a good thing. It was a good sign. I really like the aesthetic of this movie. It was cheap, and it looked cheap, but it looked cheap it was made in the late 70s, early 80s kind of way. It really fit the time period. So even though a little bit of the acting and some of the costume stuff maybe didn't quite feel 100% right, it really did have a throwback feel to it. It did look like a movie that had been shot, it looked like I was watching a movie from 30 years ago. And that was really cool. I really liked that part of it. And I liked that while they had everybody playing, 80s characters and wearing 80s fashions, they weren't wearing ridiculous 80s fashions. It didn't look like everybody was going to the club, with their disco clothes and everything like that. They looked like regular 80s outfits that people would wear, just bad outfits, and I appreciated that attention to detail, even though it was maybe not the most consistent thing in the world. I thought it was really, really good, and it really kept me engaged in the movie, kept me immersed in the concept of it being a movie from the 80s. Now, while the video quality being a little crappy kind of added to the aesthetic of the movie, the audio quality being a little crappy kind of didn't, because it would come and go. Sometimes the audio was fine and didn't bother me. Other times I couldn't quite understand what people were saying, and so that was a little bit annoying. And that probably was more of a case of budget and maybe lack of technical proficiency. So more than trying to be setting an aesthetic that was more accurate, like a low budget 80s film. So that one was a little bit more annoying, but again, made up for it by the fact that overall the aesthetic looked really cool and the kills were really transgressive and gross and imaginative and just kind of inappropriate and irreverent. And that really was a big selling point to me. Like some of the best kills from Friday the 13th and other 80s slashers, these kills were wildly inappropriate, the kind of things that would make, the more conservative people a little bit upset. And that felt refreshing because we don't see that so much in movies that were made in the 2010s. So this was a nice surprise. I wasn't expecting that in this movie, and it really won me over. It really kept me engaged. And then, of course, the fact that it's a Bible camp setting is fun. Like summer camp settings for slasher movies are pretty rote. It's kind of the norm. It's a trope, if you will. But Bible camp added an extra layer to it because it adds this religious aspect to it that I tend to be really drawn to. As you know, I like religious horror movies. I like movies that are based on religion. And this movie isn't exactly based on religion so much as the victims in the movie are Bible thumpers, if you will. But most, if not all of them, really aren't as devout as they should be. Now, I'll admit that joke wears a little thin. The priest that, is into molesting kids and stuff like that. That's not really treading new ground. It's kind of a stale joke at this point. People being really horny, even though they're supposed to be Christians and stuff like that. Not the most original joke, but for the most part, it was fine. it worked for me enough, even though it wasn't the most original or interesting thing. I still had fun with it because I had fun with these kind of stock characters being put in a slasher film setting. You know, imagine a Friday the 13th movie, but everybody's a bad Christian. That's a fun idea for me, and it really worked. It really worked for me. It hit me in a sweet spot that I kind of knew I had. That's again why I picked it. I knew it was a slasher about a Bible camp. That sounded like it would be fun to me, and it was. It really did work for me, even if some of the jokes really didn't land. And that is maybe one of my biggest knocks about the movie is that not all the jokes land. Some of the jokes really fell flat. More jokes landed than didn't land for me, so I'm okay. But many of the jokes just kind of landed with a thud. Like I said, the horror comedy balance isn't exactly perfect. That there's enough gore to balance out the comedy, but the comedy isn't all good. You know, it isn't all satirical. Some of it are just lame jokes that didn't really work. But enough of them worked to be fun. And again, it really was, you know, hitting enough good things for me. Slasher film, Bible camp, parody stuff, good gore, all the slasher tropes and motifs. All that stuff was working for me enough that I was really in a very forgiving mood watching this movie. There's a lot of stuff to forgive, but I was okay doing it. It also helped that, you know, they had a fun villain. Sister Mary Chopper is like this masked nun who's killing everybody. It's a wonderful design. It's a cool character. And it really kind of hit my sensibilities because it reminded me a little bit of Ken Russell's The Devils and Vanessa Redgrave in that movie. It was really an interesting idea to add that. I'm sure that wasn't intentional, and it may just be me who sees that in it. But that was fun for me. That added an extra layer of it to me that was pretty amusing and really worked for me. Like I said, maybe I'm being a little overly forgiving. Maybe I'm being a little bit too nice to the movie because, again, the We Nerds suggests this as a so bad it's good movie. It's not trying to be a good movie, and it's not a good movie. It's technically not very proficient. The acting is bad, and you know, the effects are not sharp and everything, but I still really enjoyed this movie. Like I said, it knows what it wants to be. It knows what it's trying to do, and it's doing it. And even though it constantly, throughout the movie, is running the risk of going too over the top, being too campy, too silly, and just losing me, like trying too hard. You know how I feel about that. Parodies and campy movies that are trying too hard to be funny always lose me. This one was riding that edge the entire movie. Just constantly threatening to be trying too hard and then coming back and winning me over again, over and over and over again. It was a really interesting experience watching the movie because I kept thinking, okay, I'm going to be out on this, but then I wasn't. And that was a nice thing. Overall, this movie seemed to hit kind of a sweet spot for me. I had a much better time than I was hoping I was going to have, and I thought I was going to have a pretty good time, but I actually enjoyed this movie quite a bit. I don't know if I'd recommend it to people because it's not necessarily the most interesting or best movie for people to watch, but I definitely think it's something that's worth your time. If you like slasher movies, if you like campy so bad it's good movies, I definitely think this is something you can get behind and have a good time with. I did, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's syllabus worthy, does it? So let's talk about that right now. So yeah, let's just talk about it. Is it syllabus worthy? I had a blast with this movie. I had a lot of fun with it, but it's not a particularly good movie. So does that mean it makes it on the syllabus? And the answer is maybe more of an extra credit movie. You know, that's what I tend to do for movies that I just tend to like a lot. Sometimes I squeeze those onto the syllabus because I don't care. It's my syllabus. I do what I want, you know. But this feels like a movie that I probably wouldn't be able to justify giving it a syllabus proper, but probably put in an extra credit. So maybe it would make the extra credit list of the So Bad It's Good, or possibly even the throwback horror, because one of the things I really liked about this movie, again, was the throwback horror aspect to it. You know, it's not really truly like, you know, it's not like Ty West making an 80s style movie, but it really did feel like I was watching a movie from the 80s, even though Reggie Bannister looked really old in it. So it really won me over in that sense. And so that's maybe where I'd probably stick it. That's my gut, is I'm making an extra credit for the throwback horror. But I probably would want to talk about it on the syllabus. And that's honestly why I'm talking about it here now, because I really did enjoy this movie quite a bit. The fact that it's not as well known, it doesn't really have a reputation per se. It really does risk being, you know, trying too hard to be funny. A lot of the jokes don't land. Would probably keep it from being on the syllabus proper. But again, for me, I tip it in the favor of being at least extra credit, at least noteworthy enough to talk about or enjoyable enough to talk about, because it did more things that I enjoyed than things that I was annoyed by. So I'll give it a pass. I'll give it a little pass, and I'll throw it on there as an extra credit because it won me over. Your mileage may vary, as people like to say. So go in at your own risk. But I would say recommend. I'd say check it out. I had fun with it. If you love slasher movies, I think you'll enjoy it. If you don't like slashers, maybe skip it. But I am very glad the Wee Nerds recommend this one. Thank you, Wee Nerds. This was a lot of fun. I really appreciated this recommendation because it did hit me in the sweet spot. So thanks again, guys, for that. And now it is time, as always, to answer a Trivia Pursuit question on camera. And we're going to talk about the killer category because, you know, Bloody Bible Camp is a slasher film. So let's talk the killer subgenre. And I'm going to answer this on camera so you can see if I know it or not. The question is this. In 1991's The Silence of the Lambs, what kind of beans does Hannibal Lecter say he ate the liver of a census taker? Well, this one's kind of easy. I mean, this is one of the most famous lines from the movie, and it's one of my favorite movies. I absolutely love this movie. We did talk about it not so long ago on the horror movie Syllabus. It's a fantastic movie. It's a masterpiece of a film. If you haven't seen it, you should definitely check it out. If you haven't seen the video where we talk about it, you should check that out too. Self-promotion. But I expect that if you're familiar with this movie, or if you're just kind of, you know, pop culture person in general, you probably already know the answer to this question. I'm going to prattle on for just a minute here to give you guys a chance to think about it in case you're not quite sure. But you're thinking about a type of beans, man. You know, you're thinking about a type of bean. I'll give you a slight hint. It's not refried beans. It's not refried beans at all. This is a great movie. This is a great line. Not so much because the line itself is good. It's actually kind of a stupid line, really, out of context. But Anthony Hopkins, in his Academy Award-winning performance, delivers this line so well, so creepily, that it becomes iconic. It becomes so memorable and became, you know, something like sort of a meme, really. And that's maybe, even if you haven't seen the movie, you probably heard this line. So think hard. If you haven't seen the movie, but you think you don't, you think I don't know this answer, think about it for a second. Maybe you know. What kind of beans does Hannibal Lecter say he ate when he ate the liver of a census taker? Think about it. Got it? You got it? I'm giving you, we're going once, going twice, because I'm going to go ahead and answer this now. As we all should know, if you don't know, the line is, I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti. So we're looking for fava beans. And the answer is, of course, fava beans. I don't even really know what fava beans are, frankly. I have never had fava beans as far as I know. I've had Chianti, though. Yeah, pretty good. Did you guys get that right? And if you didn't, what kind of beans did you say? You better not have said refried beans, because I told you not to. So hopefully you got that one right, and I love wrong answers, so if you didn't get it right, just tell us the wrong answers in the comment. We'll have a good time. But thank you very much for hanging out. Thank you very much for the recommendation. Keep giving more recommendations. I really appreciate it. This was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed it too. Next week we'll be back with more regularly scheduled programming, so until then, class dismissed.